do love an icy planet. Even better if the TARDIS shows up. Oh, look at his hair, man. So much longer. No. Not yet. Oh, is he fighting it? Oh no. That has a distinct feeling of the beginning of the end, eh? I did not expect that. Okay, I guess I'll get back to that point by the end of this story. Again, it is the final 2 episodes, right? So by the end of this 2-parter, perhaps. Unless... No, that time it's not a fake out, man. That is not a fake out. It can't be. Oh, that really caught me off guard, man. I'm on the ropes. Ooh. Hey, Rachel's back. Ah, she's a bit of a constant for the write-off episodes, right? The final 2 episodes. Oh, this is interesting.
Hello. I'm Doctor Who.
We're not assistants.
Okay, right, what does he call you?
Is she stepping in for...
Snacks?
Is she stepping in for the doctor?
Now do something non-irritating.
Oh. He let her go. For an outing, perhaps a test.
Why do you keep calling yourself Doctor Who?
Because I'm pretending to be him. Because that's the whole point of this ridiculous exercise.
Yeah.
It's not an exercise, it's a test.
Nobody knows the Doctor's real name.
There's some.
Because I grew up with him. And his real name is Doctor Who.
Bill, she's just trying to wind you up.
Yeah.
One day you will look back and wonder who I was and why I did.
No. No.
Doctor, this is a bad idea.
No, it's a good
Oh.
idea. A test run. She thinks she can be me. Let's try her out. She's the only person I've ever met who's even remotely like me.
Ah, that theme again.
So more than anything, you want her to be good.
If that's even possible. It's the hope that kills, eh?
She scares me.
Rightfully so.
Like, she really scares me.
You have to give great credit to Michelle Gomez for that as well. She just has that thing about her.
Just promise you won't get me killed.
Ugh. No. There's gotta be... Whoa.
What are they? What are those things?
Stand away. Stand away. She will be repaired.
Prepared.
Ooh. I mean, I certainly hope so. Okay, of course that's not the end of Bill. Surely not.
Wait for me.
Assumption.
Deduction.
Ooh, split diopter.
Always.
Come on, Bill. This can't be goodbye. And it's not. Okay. Too soon for that, right?
Hello. Back with us.
Who are you, the fixer? Ooh, love the score. Love how it kind of matches my mood at the moment. Oh, is this the others?
Oh, awake, is it? Awake now. Good. Settle.
Oh, God. The hell is that?
Wait for me.
I just got chills. That sounds like... Oh yeah, this is good. I was about to say, that sounds like a Cyberman, doesn't it? robotic and in its speech. Whoa. Okay. I'm in for something good, folks. I think I'm looking at Cyberman. Unless it's a misdirect. Whoa. Guess not. Ah. Friend. Ugh. Careful, careful, Bill. I know it's cruel to just shut him up, but it could draw attention. Constant pain. So the nurse didn't take care of the pain. She just shut him up. My God. This is good.
Sorry.
It's all right. They don't feel pain.
I think they do.
Yes, they do.
So why do you say they don't?
It was a clever lie, but you see straight through me. Come, tea.
What are those things?
People, they are people.
And what are you?
What are you doing to them?
Down the rabbit hole I go. Me and Bill. Ooh, look at that. Yeah, that's them. That's Missy, Doctor.
How did I get here?
You were sick, very sick.
And she was dead.
Broken. Heartbroken.
How long have I been here?
Oh, weeks. Many weeks, maybe months.
God, yeah, I came here with people, my friends.
Right, on the screen.
They don't look so bad.
Yeah, but are they okay now?
That is now. It's right now. That is them. Is live.
Frozen in time?
The picture is frozen.
Top of ship, very slow.
Oh.
Bottom, much faster.
Right.
Very fast bottom.
Time is different. From to the top
You don't know.
to the bottom.
Because of the black hole, time is moving faster
Right.
at this end of the ship than the other.
I'm basically the janitor.
Well, that's a good job.
He used to be a janitor once upon a time in an episode.
He's gonna do an
So you recognize me then.
Always takes a while.
Classic.
The months will fly by.
Beautiful photography, man. Look at this. Yes. This was 10:56. That's
Much longer, Doctor. How many more years?
yeah. I was just about to ask: is she going to age normally?
What about these life forms? Those are the descendants of your crewmates.
Wow.
Days for you, generations for them.
You always want to go outside? We go outside.
Yeah, there's going to be a bit of a
Wait for me.
reality check, eh? Yeah, I just got really emotional for a bunch of reasons. I'll explain.
You are my dearest person. You are like
I know.
a mother to me.
Definitely not a mother.
Sister.
Or an aunt.
No.
This is Doctor Who, man, at its finest. Whoa, that one looked a little bit different.
It's just
The discards?
work in progress. Oh, I like the hat.
Yeah.
I'm afraid, Miss Potts, it's your turn.
No!
Thank you for bringing her, Mr. Razor. It fits over your head.
Hold on. Maybe I was onto something earlier.
Hello. I have been so looking forward to meeting you.
Right.
Why?
It took me a while to work out who you were.
No. No. He knows about Missy.
You don't remember being here before, do you?
I've never been here before. Will you please stop whittering on or I'll have to
Whoa,
smash
you
right
might have
off
been.
the plate.
Oh, you have been here before.
As a
You
different
can trust
person.
me on that.
Or rather, a different Time Lord, perhaps. Oh God, is that Bill? Alright, man, prepare yourself. The Doctor knows.
Look at that. This ship is from Mondas.
Mondas. Does that ring a bell? Is that not?
It's a Cyberman.
It is a Cyberman, but
A Mondasian Cyberman.
a different Cyberman. Okay. I thought you were a friend. You got me.
He'll never forgive you, you know. He'll never set you free. Not when he discovers what you did to his little friend.
I haven't done anything to silly little friend.
Oh, but I'm afraid you did a long time ago.
She doesn't remember. Oh.
Where's Bill Potts?
Oh my God, that's her.
You would never be so self-destructive.
So what?
But then again, neither would I.
We're looking for Bill Potts, friend of mine.
I love disguises. Do you still like disguises? Of course, they are rather necessary when you happen to be
Is this guy?
someone's
He's got a mask on.
prime minister.
What?
Locating Bill Potts.
Here.
I am Bill Potts.
The hell is going on?
Hello, Missy.
How?
Master. I'm very worried about my future.
What have they done to you?
Operation Exodus.
Wrong name for a start. More of a beginning, really, isn't it?
I waited.
In fact, do you know what I'd call it?
Holy shit. How?
I'd call it a genesis.
You've met the eggs.
Specifically, the genesis of the Cybermen.
I waited for you.
No, it's gonna end. Are you kidding me? Brilliant. Brilliant. That is Doctor Who. Like I said, at its finest. At its finest. Okay, let's get into it, folks. I mean, listen, I'm floored. I'm completely floored. This is incredible television, and it immediately just kind of enters the Doctor Who Hall of Fame for me, right? As far as all-timer episodes, immediately. And it doesn't even need to get to the conclusion, right? Much like Heaven Sent, right in the middle of it, I just knew I'm in the middle of something incredible, something memorable, something exceptional, something that I'll never forget, and something I know I'll never get to experience for the first time ever again, much like my feelings from Heaven Sent. I thoroughly believe this is the type of episode that's kind of cut from the same cloth as Heaven Sent, right? Listen, I'm not saying, everyone has to agree with that, but this is my opinion on the matter, right? I've seen quite a bit of Doctor Who at this point, years of Doctor Who at this point. There's just not too many episodes of this ilk, right? There's incredible episodes for sure. There's some tremendous episodes, but there's a tier above those really good episodes. And that tier is for episodes such as this one, such as Heaven Sent, and perhaps a few others. But, Heaven Sent is the last time I felt like this about an episode. So, my opinion on the matter is that this is right up there, right? So if it is up there with episodes such as Heaven Sent, yeah, it immediately becomes like a top 3, top 5 for sure, but easily could be a top 3 episode of the entire show for me. And, I think this episode, perhaps a bit more so than Heaven Sent, might be a bit more, preference-based as well. I mean, Heaven Sent is a masterpiece. It simply is, It's essentially one of the all-time great episodes of television altogether. I really don't think that's like an opinion-based thing. it deserves that, right? This, sure, I can see how maybe it's not for everyone. But I think one thing pretty much every single one of us can agree on is that this is exceptional. And this is essentially, like I said a few times, Doctor Who at its finest. It has everything from top to bottom that I love about Doctor Who, and I'm sure many of you love about Doctor Who, right? This more so than some of the other episodes, perhaps stuff like Blink, and again, stuff like the masterpiece that is Heaven Sent. This actually feels much more like a normal Doctor Who episode, because again, episodes like Blink and episodes like Heaven Sent, they do have that almost standalone tone to them, don't they? Right? Like you can tell out of a bunch of episodes, in their respective seasons or series, it's meant to be a bit of a standout. This is in the flow of the series itself. So to me, this actually feels the most like a regular episode of Doctor Who. The only difference is it just excels so much. It excels more than most episodes of Doctor Who at, essentially pulling off the fundamentals. It is gripping, it is compelling, it is devastating, it is horrifying, it is incredibly fun, engaging, top to bottom, it had me, folks. It had me. And, of course, I'll speak of the top, the opening, the cold open specifically, a literal cold open at that. Sure, maybe it might feel a little bit out of place given, the rest of the episode, given the context of the rest of the episode or the events that do play out in the rest of the episode. But that being said, you can actually extract quite a bit out of that, right? And, I'll get to that. Let's kind of just focus on the episode as a whole before I actually, dive into the different components of it. I mean, there's so much to get to. I mean, John Sim, the Master returns? Yeah, that completely just shocked me, right? Now, yes, right before it does end up happening and he pulls the mask off, yeah, then it becomes kind of like, oh, hold on, the things he's saying here, right? It kind of, okay, my mindset at that point is, okay, hold on now, he's saying things such as, oh, you wouldn't be that self-destructive and neither would I, right? At that point, it's like, hold on, at that point, I'm sure I looked like a ghost. I kind of remember immediately my reaction to that. But, I'm still kind of fighting against that, right? And, the musical foreshadowing is there as well. But, looking back at it, yeah, of course, it makes sense. But for me at the time, yes, I know this is the Master's theme playing, but I thought it's more so for, Missy and the ongoing redemption arc and, the, I don't know, internal conflict, perhaps, within Missy. But, that's about to be heightened even more now. Now that, the Master is officially a part of this, final episode, the wrap-up episode for Series 10. But yeah, the big twist itself, you've got John Sim returning as the Master. Now, listen, even after it happened, I just didn't know how that's even possible, right? So it wasn't even a possibility in my mind. I mean, I suppose, for that reason, it actually kind of, works out as a better reaction for you guys, first time reaction. And then, it gives me a bit of a jolt as well, right? Listen, I've had a really similar moment a couple of series ago, right? And again, at that point, it's the theme, right? It's the Master's theme. And that allowed me to put it together that, Missy actually might be the Master, a different regeneration of the Master. And, that does end up being the case. And it was beautifully executed. And of course, who's at the helm? It's this incredible combination of Moffat and Rachel. They knew they struck gold with that combination. And they've, subsequently kept the same combination for 3 series now running, I believe, right? 8, 9, and 10. Yeah, I believe so. Because again, Missy does have that moment, the Master Missy moment back in series 8. Right? Dark Water, I believe, is the title of that episode. And again, that's another episode that's essentially one of the most memorable episodes of the show for me, right? Possibly top 10, but, I think certainly top 20. I mean, there's a lot of episodes, maybe once I do go through them all at some point, maybe it might end up being a top 30 episode. Top 20 maybe is a bit difficult, right? But I know this episode right here, it's essentially an all-timer. It's in the Hall of Fame. I put it alongside episodes such as Heaven Sent. That's how much I enjoyed this episode. You saw throughout the episode, it just had me, man. It really truly had me. And to get this type of episode here at the end of all things Doctor Who, it's bittersweet. It's bittersweet, but like I said, I kind of deserve it after the last run of episodes. The last few episodes, the last stretch of episodes hasn't been the greatest. It just hasn't, unfortunately. A lot of just average episodes. And that's the thing. That's one of the things that's been a bit of a constant, right? It can go from an episode like the last episode, episode 10, to this incredible shift. From an episode that's essentially barely average, even if it does have some really interesting things, it can go to something like this. And now there's tremendous setup for the things to come in the grand finale, right? Though of course, I do know there is the Christmas special, and that episode itself is actually meant to be the final episode of Capaldi. And then of course, Jodie comes in after that. So if you go back to the opening, right? The incredibly jarring opening, jarring in a good sense. I mean, it almost kind of establishes this promise of the things to come, right? And you see that it's an icy planet. Always exciting to see an icy planet. But one thing it most definitely confirms is that is going to happen after everything plays out in this story, right? And the Doctor is going to be by himself, right? I mean, most of the time he really is by himself, once a regeneration is beginning to kick in. Though, of course, companions are close by as well in those moments. But here, you see he has traveled to this icy planet, or he's been taken to the icy planet. Let's see, right? It's still a bit unknown at the moment, but you see that he's certainly by himself. There's no signs of, Bill. My God. Yeah, Bill. Of course, there's no signs of Bill. Because there is no signs of Bill by the end of this episode. She has become something else. She has become a Mondasian Cyberman. Now, I'm guessing this has to be something from classic Doctor Who, right? Because the way it's presented as well is, I've been through these moments throughout the years now. Anytime there's like a big, reveal, sometimes you can just kind of tell, oh, this is for the classic fans. They'll get a kick out of this. This should get them excited, right? All of the classic Doctor Who fans. And of course, there's really quite a definitive moment as well. First you've got Missy who works out that this is an Earth-like planet, almost identical, but not quite, right? Kind of essentially a twin. And she, arrives at the conclusion that this is a planet called Mondas, right? And you see, to her, it's like, oh, like it's a big deal to her as well to understand this. And then, of course, you've got the Doctor himself just, putting it out there, making it clear. It's a Mondasian Cyberman, right? That's as definitive as it gets, as a big moment, right? And unfortunately, in this case, it happens to be Bill Potts. And, just the voiceover for the Cybermen, there's something, it's unsettling for sure. That's an understatement for this episode, right? This episode is full of just incredible tonal shifts, isn't it? The execution, the directing choices, the writing choices are just phenomenal in this episode. But, the voice, my God, there's something not pathetic. There's something, you pity them, right? You immediately pity these Cybermen. Especially even more so that it's meant to be Bill. It's devastating, man. It is, because, Bill essentially dies in the first, 8 or 9 minutes of this episode, right? She gets shot. There's a hole blown through her chest, right? So that right there is, again, that sudden jarring tonal shift, right? Because everything before that is just really quite fun. Right, though, there's a sense of danger sprinkled in as well. You kind of go back to that flashback of Bill telling the Doctor, she really scares me, like really, really scares me. Yet the Doctor is really quite locked in. He's quite confident that he can do something here. He can actually help reform Missy, right? He's really latched onto that idea. to the point that he becomes a little too latched onto that idea. And ultimately, it allows for these types of things to play out to their natural conclusion. And that, that includes Bill getting shot and then taken. And then ultimately, after years and years of spending time down below in level 1056, she becomes a Cyberman, right? She gets betrayed. It's, oh my goodness. It's not just a betrayal for Bill. It's a betrayal for me because I loved John Sim as Mr. Razor. Mr. Razor is one of the great, one episode characters for me. I really latched onto that character, right? So it really immediately puts us in Bill's boots because just like us, Bill takes to Mr. Razor, right? He becomes a friend. It's insane. It's so on brand for the Master to spend years and years getting to know the companion of the Doctor. And honestly, I do think a part of him must have, enjoyed some moments, right? He became really quite friendly. I think there is chemistry there, right? That relationship, Mr. Razor and Bill, there's something so wholesome about it up until a certain point, of course, right? It got me. It got me. I really, really adored Mr. Bill. Mr. Bill. Mr. Razor. I did. I enjoyed that character so much. I enjoyed how he looked after Bill so much. To me, it had a sibling relationship about it. Though, there's a lot of fun moments as he claims, you're like a mother to me or an aunt. The humor in this episode is exceptional as well, I'd say. Especially given how dark it can get. Honestly, it's the type of episode, again, much like Heaven Sent, that you just kind of want to live in. Right? It might not make sense to everyone, but I'm sure to many that might make sense. I feel that this episode had that exact same intoxicating and transportive quality that Heaven Sent had, right? And it's a type of episode that I really immediately just had this urge to go back to, right? That I didn't want to exit from that episode, that feeling of being in the middle of that episode. Again, to live in the episode itself, right? I feel that for, certain episodes from time to time, and, I'm speaking of just everything at this point, be it other live action shows, be it even gaming, it happens with gaming as well. Moments that you just kind of want to live in and kind of freeze in time, right? And then, of course, that, applies to film, certainly applies to film, and, of course, anime and books and everything else that has storytelling. But let's go back to the return of the Master, our Master in disguise and all that. But a thing I've noticed here, and I really quite like here, is that it's actually a bit toned down. It's dialed down, isn't it? The character of the Master. If I'm being completely honest, already far less annoying than, the first few times I saw the Master. And you see in the limited appearance that he already appears to be much more restrained, right? And much less, mad scientist and all of that, because, the first time round, he's a bit much. He just is. And I'm speaking of, him being around Tennant's doctor, right? Yeah, I don't know. It was a bit much for me. So yeah, I'm really quite optimistic about this upcoming episode. And maybe a different type of take on the Master. Now, ultimately, he serves quite an interesting purpose here, and it's really quite a clever writing choice to bring him back, introduce him at this point in time as well, given the fact that I am in the middle of quite the interesting potential redemption arc for Missy, the Master, right? So at this point, it kind of almost feels like it's about to take a bit of a speed bump or hit a bit of a speed bump, right? As she ends up face to face with her biggest enemy, right? Herself. It's good. It's good stuff. The Master's presence is a physical, literal manifestation of the past that Missy is attempting to leave behind, for good. And you can also kind of look at it from the Doctor's perspective. He is also in the presence of a living reminder of her past deeds, right? The things that she is capable of, or I suppose, used to be capable of. I think it's about to give me a really interesting internal tug of war as well, because Missy is different from the Master. I think her performance as Missy, or rather, Michelle Gomez's performance as the Master, or, in this specific case, Missy, I do think it's quite nuanced. And of course, I'm sure it's not going to be a surprise to anyone, but I most definitely prefer Michelle Gomez's take on the Master as Missy. So much more than John Sim's take on the Master. Just that character back then, at least, just wasn't my cup of tea, right? But now I'm excited. I'm excited to see the portrayal, or maybe a bit of a different take on the Master through John Sim. But I'm still expecting a lot of the fundamentals to be there, right? For this tug of war, a potential foot in each camp to function, right? She's going to need a lot of the elements of the Master, the person that she used to be at play. And then, of course, on the other end of it, you've got the Doctor, right? And that's the point I'm making about a foot in each camp. So I don't think Missy has just completely abandoned everything. Hell, it could even be strategic for her at this point in time, at least, right? Partly strategic to actually side with her former self, the Master, immediately. I do believe that at this point she might be a little bit conflicted, and that might continue into the next episode. I mean, I'm hoping it continues into the next episode, and the setup is there for that, right? I mean, I've got 3 Time Lords. 3 Time Lords. I mean, yes, I've seen that before, at really special occasions, though. Of course, the one that comes to mind immediately is the Day of the Doctor. Now I suppose it's the Day of the Master, right? Multiple Masters, and of course another Time Lord, the Doctor himself. But yeah, since it is a little bit similar to the Day of the Doctor, and that component or that idea of multiple Doctors, or perhaps Time Lords coming into contact with prior or even future iterations or incarnations, right? I guess it kind of throws up that idea of I don't know, crossing your own time stream and all of that, out of sync timelines. And perhaps, that kind of brings up this other idea of Missy potentially not remembering any of this. At that point, the one thing that became clear is, okay, Missy, or the Master, has been here before. I mean, at that point, it's clear that, okay, Mr. Razor is not who he claims to be. He's not actually that loving and caring person that befriended Bill for all those years. So at that point, it's clear, okay, yeah, he's someone else, right? And this someone else also knows who Missy is. He's able to put it together, right? And then, that kind of goes back to that idea of the camera is shifting and Nardole saying something like, ooh, someone's watching us now. Someone else, perhaps. I suppose that was Mr. Razor, right? The Master. And, around that point, you've got the Master still, in the disguise, saying things like, oh, you can trust me on that one. You've been here before. So at that point, it became clear to me, okay, oh, she just might not remember it. She might have been here as another person, but, more specifically as another iteration of the Master, and she just doesn't remember it. So in my mind at that time, the mental image is of, oh, okay, John Sim's Master, or maybe even one of the classic Doctor Who Masters, has been here before. But then, of course, you immediately have to ask the question, why the hell is the Master here in the first place? I mean, I suppose, he tried something here. I mean, in hindsight, I guess, yeah, he is actually asking everyone else to keep it all hush-hush, be it the nurse, be it the fixer, the other doctor who transforms you, who operates on you to turn you into that Mondasian Cyberman. So the whole thing's an act, essentially, right? Because, of course, the Master, and, in this case, the Master in disguise as Mr. Razor, is not going to be, working for any of these people, right? He's the one in control, most likely. So he got there. I'm not sure if it's by chance or if by choice. He tried something there, something that the Master, would try, perhaps, and it didn't come off. But then, of course, you have to go even further back, because last I saw of the Master, him and the rest of the Time Lords kind of go away, don't they? Right, in that finale. And this is the next time I see the Master. So, on that front, I'll just kind of have to hold my horses and just get to the next episode. I'm sure I'll get my answers. But, at the moment, I'm also kind of thinking about the possibility of maybe getting to see the Master actually regenerate into Missy. Is that I mean, that's assuming that, the John Sim Master goes directly from that, take on the Master to Missy's Master. Right? I mean, that's just been my understanding since, the introduction of Missy all that time ago, a couple of series ago. I mean, yeah, that is the case, isn't it? Because she tells the Doctor back in, again, Dark Water, I believe, that, I couldn't just continue calling myself the Master, could I? Right? And again, that episode also had Cybermen, right? The RoboCop looking Cybermen. Listen. One thing I think is so clear is that these Mondasian Cybermen, so much more effective. I like them so much more. There's something about them that is really quite creepy, right? That doesn't feel just, I don't know, generic and robotic. And I don't know, that design of the Cybermen, it didn't do much for me. And I've seen it a few times, of course, or, over the span of the past few years covering this show. But yeah, this take on the Cybermen, this is good. This is brilliant, even. The body horror of it is so much more effective. It's so creepy and unsettling. It really is. It truly is, right? And in a sense, it's really quite heartbreaking. I mean, the whole thing is just so incredibly bleak and dark, isn't it? Either they're silently screaming in pain or begging to be killed, right? Honestly, it feels like some of the darkest stuff I've seen or experienced in this show. Especially those initial moments of Bill discovering, the halls and the operating theater, the waiting room, the actual operating room itself, and then the out room, right? Once you've been operated on, that whole sequence is one of the most compelling and gripping and haunting moments, I've experienced in Doctor Who and just beyond Doctor Who. Listen, this is not just one of my all-time favorite episodes of Doctor Who. This goes beyond Doctor Who. I'm claiming, just like I did with Heaven Sent, I'm claiming that this is one of my all-time favorite episodes of anything. That's how much I love this episode and everything about this episode. Sure, maybe you can nitpick a few things, perhaps that idea of the Doctor taking his time to explain everything to the Blue Man, right? And perhaps maybe Nardole, but I think it's mostly for the Blue Man. And again, it's for us, the audience, as well. And I think, there's a lot of great directing and writing choices as it cuts back and forth, as Mr. Razor describes it or explains it to Bill. And then, it cuts to up top, the Doctor doing it for the Blue Man and perhaps, Nardole as well. And of course, us, the audience. And I think it is quite effective in explaining the whole, idea of it, right? The time dilation aspect of it because of the dark hole. But I think, if you look at it, it's I don't know, man, it's months going by as he's taken his time describing these things. But, before I go back to Bill actually discovering all of that for the first time, in, one of the great Doctor Who moments, let me kind of finish up my point about, the Master potentially regenerating into Missy by the end of this. I mean, the whole nature of this episode and, the Master and, musical foreshadowing and all of that, it's beginning to remind me of Utopia as well. There I do get to see Derek Jacobi regenerate into the Master, right? That take on the Master, John Sims' take on the Master. So, I've seen it before. But again, there's a bit of a speed bump there because surely I'm not going to see two Missies, if indeed, by the end of it all, John Sims' Master actually regenerates into Missy. So I'm not sure, now I'm not really too sure about that whole thing. But, let's go back to that scene once again, of Bill waking up. And of course, that's the first appearance of Mr. Razor, and then he kind of disappears. And then, from that point on, it's the stretch, the sequence is, it's masterful. The execution of it is just masterful. It keeps you there. Hell, at times, I think it's kind of even reflected in my, reaction and the reaction through my body as well. It felt like I'm frozen in my seat. And that's the type of thing, maybe I'll speak for myself, as an enjoyer of storytelling, again, in its many forms. I have felt that before for a few things. It's, oh my God, I'll never forget that moment, being just frozen in my seat, letting it play out as it just kind of hijacks my senses, right? And like I said, it's a transportive experience as I find myself just as baffled and creeped out as Bill in those moments, as it slowly begins to creep in the background. Pain, and that really robotic speech. And of course, initially, almost immediately, that led me to believe that this could be Cybermen. Ultimately, I do end up being on the right track, but just a different take on the Cybermen. But as it plays out over and over, pain, I found myself, with full body chills, right? Goosebumps head to toe. I mean, that entire prolonged scene is one of the most gripping and one of the most tense. I mean, the amount of tension it's able to create is just exceptional, man. It is. It truly is. And again, other factors come into play as well. The set design, the visuals are some of the most haunting and memorable I've seen in all of Doctor Who, or in anything really. Right, the halls, those really creepy halls, and the rooms, the rooms that kind of really reminded me of, episodes from series 6, right? I think Day of the Moon specifically, perhaps. Amy Pond going into that room, right? All those beds, but that tremendous sense of building dread, right? The morbid curiosity of the whole thing. It is just captivating stuff. It truly is. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that scene and that moment and how it made me feel in that moment. And one of the most devastating things about that is that Bill ends up going through that exact same pain. It's, oh my God, just to think of Bill going through that, even though she remains so optimistic over the years she spends down there, right? It's heartbreaking stuff, man. And then, of course, speaking of devastating moments, that final shot, her reaching out to the Doctor, I waited for you. As of course, the two masters, Missy and Master, kind of look on, they've got cheeky looks on their faces as well. But yeah, it's one of the saddest things, one of the most heartbreaking things I've seen happen to a companion. And I do have to give a lot of credit to the writing of Doctor Who, over the years, in their handling of companions. I'm not saying I want to see companions go through pain and such devastation, but, the choices to put them through that. Yeah, that's commendable, I suppose, because there's only really Martha who gets a bit of a happy send-off, essentially on her own terms. The majority of the others do not get a send-off like that. And again, it reiterates the dangers inherent of being a traveling companion for the Doctor, or with the Doctor. I mean, they do actually explore that once again here in that flashback. It's a lovely moment. Bit of backstory, as the Doctor tries to explain his relationship to the Master, and why exactly he's so dead set on taking this chance, to finally kind of have that breakthrough moment that he's always wanted. Because again, at the end of the day, there's no one else like this out there for the Doctor. It's his oldest friend, right? And because of that, the Doctor does allow himself to become a little bit, I don't know, man, a little bit complacent, maybe a little bit overconfident as well, to the point that he does end up sending Bill into a really bad situation. Listen, I love the Doctor, but here, he's certainly at fault for the things that do end up happening to Bill. But yeah, the moment it zooms in on, Bill Cyberman's eye, it's oh my God, just to see the actual human remains of Bill inside, right, tearing up. And then, of course, you see the actual tear, an actual human tear leaking out of the Cyberman as well. And I suppose that kind of goes back to that idea of the tear ducts, right, in the design of the RoboCop-looking Cyberman that I'm used to. But, as far as Bill is concerned and her role in the next episode, Bill is a Cyberman, right, a Mondasian Cyberman. So that's about to be something really new, really new. I mean, my expectation, I suppose at this point, is that, yeah, she is going to be joining the Doctor in Ardol again, it all kind of depends on how it picks up right after. But I'm expecting, Bill Cyberman to be a part of the finale, right? So, there's quite the interesting challenge as well. How do you go a full finale with a companion that is essentially a Cyberman at this point? But the thing that's really quite fascinating here is that Bill actually maintains her mannerisms, within the Cybermen. She maintains her memories, though, even though she kind of looks up the database. She's emotional. She's crying, right? Again, the single tear that's being shed in that really, really poignant moment. So Bill is still there. She's still there. It's almost as if she's fighting the programming of the Cybermen. She's able to kind of hold on to being Bill. So yeah, there's certainly some interesting setup there for quite an interesting take on, a companion in a finale. Bill against the Cybermen programming and all of that. And just how
it's just how, a companion being a Cyberman, physically being a Cyberman is going to function, I suppose, in the story as a whole. But yeah, once again, I do want to go back to Mr. Razor, Master. Listen, maybe I'm deluding myself, but a part of me does kind of believe that, over the years, maybe he did, have a semblance of friendship that he felt towards Bill. Again, I could just be deluding myself, but, I'm almost trying to latch onto that hope. There's a few moments as, the fixer or the doctor who's going to operate on Bill is, trying to describe things to her. And, it cuts to Mr. Razor at the time. He's almost not frustrated, but he's, he does one of those things, he kind of looks to the ground, starts scratching his head, almost as if, maybe there's a tiny, tiny bit of him that feels kind of bad about this, right? Again, this could be headcanon, I suppose, but I really kind of want to latch onto that idea that, all those years that he spent with Bill, that's good company. It is good company at the end of the day. But again, like I said, it's really on brand for the Master as well to spend years getting to know and looking after, one of the Doctor's companions to then pull off something like that, right? That entirely could be the case here, and I'm just deluding myself into thinking that maybe there is a semblance of a friendship that is there. Because listen, that duo is so wholesome, right? It's one of the things I've enjoyed most about this episode. And yeah, I've got to say, John Sim as Mr. Razor is actually one of the best parts of this episode, for me at least. I just loved that character so much, right? And you have to give credit to John Sim for that. You do. I love those cheeky moments, especially even more cheeky in hindsight. He'll be saying things like, oh, you see right through me. Oh, you saw right through my disguise. You saw right through my mask, or you saw right through my clever lie, right? He'll be saying things like that. And then later it's like, oh, come on. The thing is, something about Mr. Razor felt off as well, in the sense that he didn't look like a normal human. I asked the question, and, what exactly are you meant to be? I thought it's maybe like an alien, a new type of alien or something. I didn't immediately think that this is meant to be a normal human. So I knew there's something a little bit off about Mr. Razor as well. And ultimately that's because of the mask that he's rocking, right? It didn't quite look completely human. And that kind of reminds me, I would love to hear from you guys and your experiences of this moment, of this twist as it aired. That's one of my favorite things about this, to hear from you guys, right? To kind of almost get to feel how things felt at the time of, airing. And isn't it just so heartbreaking and ironic that it's actually this, version of Missy that she ends up placing her trust in, Bill ends up placing her trust in, in the Master. Though, of course, she doesn't know that at the time, but, again, dramatic irony, right? And again, this goes back to that scene of her letting the Doctor know that Missy really scares me, like really, truly scares me. And yeah, at the end of the day, it's not misplaced at all, right? Yeah, it might not be Missy literally who ends up doing this to Bill, but it is the Master, someone Missy used to be, right? And something Missy used to be capable of. So her fears are not misplaced at all. But you see the tight shot of the Doctor's face, his reaction to this. You see, ultimately he makes a choice to, continue. He could have decided at that point, okay, no, maybe it's a tad bit risky, especially because, Bill's not comfortable, right? But he pushes through. And, in that conversation, there's a lot of fun stuff as well, right? At the time, it felt really fun and playful. This idea of, humans are just so easy to kill. Humans are just so, I don't know, man. They don't even have a backup heart. He's joking about that kind of thing. And you see it cuts back to Bill, again, a hole through her chest. She does end up getting a backup heart, doesn't she? Yeah, there's a bit of dark humor present throughout this episode as well. Everything about this episode, man, there's just so much about this episode to love. But even if you go to the beginning of the episode, post cold open, of course, post title screen, the establishing shot there is tremendous. It's incredible. It builds immediate excitement for the things to come. And the crazy thing is, at one point, I thought I had seen that field. Right, I thought it's from Smile. I thought it's about to tie everything back together or something. But no, it turns out no, this is just a colony ship, and it has these types of levels, right? Of this magnitude. Miles and miles and all of that, as Nardole describes a little bit later on. But yeah, that establishing shot as the camera pans all the way to the dark hole. And I've got to say, that looked phenomenal, man. That looked as good as any other depiction of a dark hole, right? I thought it just looked tremendous. And, that type of thing really gets you going almost immediately. And then, of course, the camera travels to that control room, and I got Missy exiting the TARDIS. Missy on the job, essentially. Hello, I'm Doctor Who. It's, it's really quite meta, and it's really quite on the nose, and I'm sure, it's kind of, having a bit of fun. It's something even I've run into. People thinking that the Doctor is actually called Doctor Who, right? And not just the Doctor. And then, of course, you've got the audience surrogate, Bill, who's saying, nah, he's just the Doctor. And then, of course, Missy continues to be cheeky. She's having a blast out there. And again, Michelle Gomez is a riot in this episode, right? They let her loose, and she is just phenomenal. But I thought it's really quite effective in its depiction of the colony ship, right? Up top, floor 0, I believe, right? It's pristine. It's sleek. It's futuristic looking in its presentation, right? Almost untouched. But then down below, all the way below to 1056, yeah, it's night and day, essentially. It's a different world altogether, right? It's grimy, it's lived in, it's falling apart. The humans are essentially dying and falling apart to the point that, conversion to this thing that ultimately ends up being, a Mondasian Cyberman it's a bit more, I don't know, digestible for them. They've reached that point now that, they have to survive by doing something like this. And the thing is, the Doctor actually gets a limited amount of screen time in this one. And, that's really quite effective as well, right? Because it really, really kind of drives home, the difference in the time that's being spent on the ship, from Bill's perspective and the Doctor's perspective. For Bill, I truly felt the passage of time. Right? I thought it's so effective. And, it spends a lot of time with Bill, right? Almost kind of going through the day-to-day that she has kind of settled in because this is her foreseeable future, right? And she kind of has to accept it until ultimately the Doctor and, again, Missy and Nardole show up perhaps. And of course, in addition to Michelle Gomez, everyone else is at the top of their games. I'd say that Pearl Mackie actually put in a tremendous performance. Another thing that was really quite clear to see in this episode and feel in this episode, again, through her acting as well and her being down there, it's that feeling of melancholy, right? The whole thing is just coursing with it. And, you saw, I got emotional at one point, and it happened the second time, she gets that glimpse, that after image of the Doctor, right? The message he left for her. At that time, it hit me hard, man. It hit me really quite hard because it reminded me of my own goodbye, imminent goodbye to this whole thing I've been doing for years. And I mean, yes, I'll be continuing off screen, but it did kind of hit me like a truck all of a sudden to see that really specific imagery of the Doctor just kind of disappearing, that lingering image just disappearing from her mind as well. And then, of course, beyond that, having to say goodbye to Peter Capaldi's Doctor really soon as well. that lingering, disappearing image really kind of put me in that mindset. But yeah, going back to that friendship that's developed over the years, again, I'm remembering that it's, for another reason, it's really quite on brand, the Master being a master manipulator as well, right? You go back and look at Lucy, right? From series 3. And, if I do go back to that little flashback of them having dinner, on top of that roof, Bill and the Doctor, it's incredibly wholesome, the whole thing. It's charming, it's wholesome, to gain a bit more insight into the relationship, between the Doctor and the Master. You see the whole idea of the beat of the drums. It really kind of infected the Master's mind, right? And, I guess you can maybe even say he seems much more restrained and in control, perhaps, because maybe he doesn't hear those anymore. I mean, I've got to say, the closing moments of this episode are truly sublime. Moffat's script exceptionally cutting between two scenes of revelation, right? Monumental in nature as well, right? And, of course, expertly directed by Rachel. I mean, you know, it's got such strong direction throughout. You know, it's a thoroughly gripping episode of television, right? It just crackles with great ideas and just really well written character scripting and fine acting, of course. It all just comes together so perfectly. And, you know, as you guys know, my opinion is that most of the time, or, you know, I'd say there's a really good track record at this time, you know, the penultimate episode, you know, part ones of these two-part finales usually end up being the better episode, for me at least, in my experience at least. So yeah, you know, this episode's gonna take some beating, right? But you know, the setup is quite tremendous. The things that are at play now, it's really quite unique. So listen, this could be it. Maybe the follow-up episode to this incredible all-timer episode could blow me away, right? It's a possibility. It is. But yeah, you know, at the end of the day, it is the beginning of the end. You know, that constant, that ever-present, ticking time bomb plot device of the regeneration is most definitely at play here. And yeah, you see that the Doctor appears to be broken, right? He appears to be devastated. And he's certainly fighting the inevitable regeneration. So that alone also tells me quite a bit about his state of mind and, you know, how he kind of gets to this point. And also you see that his hair looks quite a bit longer. So it doesn't even have to be an immediate follow-up, does it? Hell, this could maybe even be, you know, beyond the next episode. It could be a part of the Christmas special, perhaps. Again, given how he looks. But yeah, I think I'll wrap it up there, folks. Incredible episode, tremendous episode, exceptional episode. It's an all-timer. It goes directly into the Hall of Fame of Doctor Who episodes alongside episodes such as Heaven Sent. And again, you know, much like Heaven Sent, it is one of my favorite episodes of anything ever, really. You know, that's how much I liked it. But yeah, you know, if you enjoyed this, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you are interested in full length, timer-based full length, of course, yeah, that might be handy for something like this. I'm guessing it's going to be a tough edit, and I'm guessing it'll be a tough edit for the next two episodes as well. But yeah, you know, early access, by the time this hits YouTube, there should be 2 more early access episodes. But yeah, if you're interested, the links are in the description and the pinned comment, also links to social media, if that's your thing. Right then, thank you so much for joining me, folks, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. It always is. And I do hope to see you again soon for the next one. Until then, take it easy.